Proposal to withdraw air traffic services from 7 regional airports?
Yeah, so obviously part of our arrangements with Air New Zealand is to continue to maintain basic levels of connectivity with our regions, and so of course we'd be concerned if we're losing a fundamental part of that network, and so I know that's something that Minister Phil Twyford is aware of and is currently working on.
Is it reasonable given that they've claimed millions from the aviation package?
And this is one of the reasons that package existed, was because we valued and know we need to keep those links going, regardless of the fact that we're in alert level 4. We need to be ready to once again have lesser restrictions. So that's why Minister Twyford is working on this issue now.
Can you tell us about the number of foreign citizens in New Zealand who have now been repatriated and the number still waiting to be repatriated and the plan for them going forward?
So we still, I would say, in the thousands. We've got the number of German flights. We had the Netherlands working on flights, and for a time I also believe the UK. I would want to give you something a bit more up to date on that though in terms of numbers, but we've had a steady track of repatriations coming out of New Zealand. But they are still significant numbers as I understand, and including some foreign nationals who will need to transit through New Zealand if they are to get out of the Pacific, which also there are a number there. I'll come in the front.
Is the government looking at wage support for people who are employed by government-funded organisations such as a cleaner at a council who's lost work during this time but isn't able to get the wage subsidy?
And sorry, your classification for why they couldn't get the wage subsidy? Because they're casual workers, or?
Government-funded organisation.
Oh, well, so you're using the example of a council cleaner?
Yeah, this question on behalf of someone else.
I wouldn't mind getting a bit more detail on that, because ultimately you don't get it as a government-funded organisation because we continue to fund you in order to operate continuously through this period. Others outside of that generally are able to access the wage subsidy. So I wouldn't mind looking at the example you've given. I've also been asked about casual staff. There is provision within the wage subsidy as long as an employer lists casual staff for them to be able to be included within the wage subsidy as well.
We've heard of government departments sending rent increase notices and chasing people for debt collection. Is that what you'd call compassionate?
What I will say on the issue of raised around kāinga ora, that was an error. That should never have happened. That was an automated letter that was dispatched. Kāinga ora now are on the phone. They're making, I understand, roughly 2,000 calls to apologise to people who receive such letters because, as I say, it was automated. It should never have happened.
Do you acknowledge how distressing that would have been?
Absolutely, and absolutely I do. And that is why those individuals are being called personally to have that apology given to them and to make sure that people can have any concerns that they can talk them through with someone on the phone. It should never have happened.
Government departments chasing people for debt at the moment?
Again, I find that very surprising. If you give me the names of where that's happening, I'll look to fix it. Keeping in mind, though, if anyone is misusing the wage subsidy, we will go after that. So there is enforcement action happening at the moment, and there might be areas where it's, for instance, the government enforcing payments to others. So, of course, people through the courts who have to pay reparations to victims, or people who need to pay child support subsidy. That's not money to us, it's money much needed for other people, and so there might be some quirks in there.
Grassroots team, golf courses want an exemption under essential services for green maintenance because they're worried that the results will be catastrophic and they have to shut down and not reopen. Why is it taking so long to get that looked at, and will you grant an exemption?
Because the reason that has taken time is that everything has to be viewed through a public health lens. I have had this raised with me. Officials are working on that issue as we speak.
On that, from Sir Bob Charles, he says by 4 weeks courses will close and never reopen. We need a small amount of maintenance to be carried out.
Yeah.
Please look into this.
Yeah.
What do you
so
think of that?
What we have done in some areas where it is health and safety, in the sense that councils have said they want to keep maintenance because rodents become an issue, and then in those areas where it's just a single person, no contact with others, there has been the ability for that to be managed because our principles have always been maintain health and safety at the same time. When it comes to those recreational areas, public health lens needs to be our starting point, and that's what's being worked through now.
On the lockdown, there seems to be a little bit of confusion potentially amongst the public that at the end of the lockdown, it's life as usual again. Can you explain why that is the case?
When we're in the position to move from alert level 4, it will only be from there to alert level 3. So life will still be different. We do want to ease our restrictions, but if we move too quickly and loosen up too quickly, we will be back to the beginning. No one wants to be in alert level 4 longer than we need to, so that's why we need to be so careful as we exit it.
What are the criteria for schools reopening under level 3? What schools are allowed to reopen and what schools aren't?
Yeah. And so again, that's where I would caution, we've obviously been preparing for distance learning, not because we think we'll be in alert level 4 for a long time, but because there may be different situations for different learning levels, so ECE, primary and secondary. The Minister of Education is again going over the guidelines that were set before alert level 4 to make sure that we've got them all nice and tight. And when we're talking next week about some of the specifics of level 3, we'll be including education in that.
In your opening remarks, you mentioned that if we start to relax 2 weeks and then we could be back at the starting blocks. Have you been given advice that it could only take that short amount of time to
If we left now, yes.
Just also provide more information about the guidelines being released next week. How much detail can businesses expect there? Can they expect to be told who's essential and who's non-essential?
So what we'll do is work from the principles that we did for alert level 4, and that was keeping interaction with one another to a bare minimum, except for essential services. So we will use principles and then some examples. One of the issues is we have tens of thousands of businesses out there, and so often there will be questions that will come up even when we provide principles, and so we want to give enough time to work through some of those. So that's why we'll be releasing some of that detail next week.
Just going back on that 2-day notice period, essentially, that you're giving them to be able to ramp back up, they will say that is not enough.
No, just to be clear, that's essentially what we're doing now is say everyone prepare for alert level 3. We'll be providing more detailed guidance on what that will look like next week. And then 2 days out from when we're due to come to the end of the 4 weeks, we'll be letting people know whether we are moving out or not. So that's the timeline we're working to. But if you wish to prepare now, and I'd encourage you to do so, the 3 basic starting points, make sure you look at whether or not you can work with social distancing. Can we contact trace all of the customers or your employees that you work with? And do you or will you need PPE? Those are some simple things that we ask people to already prepare for.
Has Minister Parker received legal advice from Crown Law yet regarding the Ruby Princess?
I've seen some. There is a bit more work to be done, particularly given this is primarily a customs issue, but work continues, so only preliminary at this stage.
What have you seen so far?
Nothing that I can share with you at this stage because it is only preliminary advice.
Minister, Singapore's app has been sort of criticised for needing a really high level of uptake in order for it to be effective. If you have half of the population using it, then you only track 25% of actual contacts.
Yes.
How do you get that uptake in New Zealand?
Well, ultimately, the decision is that we either have something that everyone is forced to use, or we have something that people voluntarily use, but we try and get as much uptake as possible. There are huge issues with forcing people to use apps that track their movements, as you can imagine. So we are opting for apps that people choose to partake in. But I think if people understand that it's one of the things that will help us stay out of stringent measures like Alert Level 4, then they might be encouraged to take it up. Ashley, did you want to comment on that as well?
Well, just to add that, again, the use of any technology, including the apps, will always be an adjunct to our core contact tracing functionality. The other thing that we can do, of course, is enhance our ability to get contact details for people by using
you.